What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and I have exhausted every one of my online video streaming services. In fact, my recently played videos for Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus is just a catalog of every video that exists on those platforms. Tens of thousands of hours of content consumed at the health of my physical and mental well-being. Which is why I figured that it's time for a new streaming service. And today we're going to be doing a full comprehensive review of PureFlix, the streaming platform dedicated to wholesome content for Christian. I'm just kidding. This is a Warhammer 40k channel. We're doing Warhammer TV today. So let's dive into our mywarhammer.com account, log in, and check out Warhammer TV to ask ourselves the question, is Warhammer TV worth a subscription? Included in a Warhammer Plus subscription alongside a bunch of other random stuff, Warhammer TV is Games Workshop's answer to Netflix, I guess. But it's not actually really Netflix. One thing that you'll notice once you dive into the content that's here is that it's actually closer to YouTube, because a lot of the content that is available, it has a direct analog from many popular Warhammer YouTube channels. So what we're going to be covering today is the Warhammer TV platform itself, as well as some of the content that's available on it. What I'm not going to be doing today is giving in-depth reviews of each of the shows, but if that's something you would like me to do, go ahead and throw a comment down below, because I'd certainly be interested. Instead, I'm just going to be giving my brief thoughts on each show as part of the platform as a whole. One of the weird things about these shows is that they combine both Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k content, which, as someone who has very little interest or knowledge about Age of Sigmar, is a little bit strange. Once we start looking into a particular series, we'll notice that this content gets combined and the borders between the two IPs kind of weakens a little bit. Now, the first thing to talk about is the actual platform itself, because one of the things that you'll notice first off is once we click on a video, there is almost an entire lack of player controls in this video. We can pause and play, but that's it. So we're missing things like a skip intro button, which I feel like is one of the very basic pieces of technology that Netflix has brought us, and really one of the ways that Netflix has changed the world for the better. Also, that 10-second skip, pretty annoying for me personally as I'm trying to scroll through videos and find specific bits and pieces. I can't do that. You have to just click with your mouse and let everything rebuffer, which can get a little bit awkward. There's also no preview that pops up, at least in the browser version. When you mouse over the track, usually you see a little thumbnail of where you're actually going, but instead we just get a timestamp. Now, this does have a Roku TV app, which I really appreciate. So if you do have one of those, you can install it and watch Warhammer TV videos from your TV, which is cool. And it does have a little bit more player controls in there. You can bounce videos around a little bit with the Roku remote, and I believe it gives you better previews of where you're fast forwarding to, but on the browser version, there's no way to do any of those things. There's also some additional weirdness where clicking on a video, like we've done here and here, doesn't actually play that video. It just brings up this sort of embedded info page that you then have to click play on in the video separately. That's a little bit inconvenient, and if you're not paying attention or you've been on a different platform like Netflix, which just wants to autoplay you every video instantaneously, you can think that like it's frozen or something because you're clicking on the video but it's not playing. Very confusing. Now, we're looking at battle reports right now, and another problem is that we actually don't have a date of publication. We have the year, which is fine, I guess. I guess it's sort of standard boilerplate for any piece of content, but especially given that Warhammer TV has not only lore, but also battle report content, it actually makes that content much less useful, since both of these styles of content can be superseded by future releases. Games Workshop is no stranger to retconning its lore or changing its lore with new additions, and the same goes even more for battle report content, since a game like 40k, which gets updates probably 4 times a year, in addition to FAQs and smaller changes to the core rules or faction rules, you may not actually know what version of the game these battle reports are being played on. I'll go ahead and admit here that a lot of this content is not created for a player like me. I tend to be a very competitive player and more focused on the gameplay than the other ancillary aspects of the hobby. I do watch battle reports though, and I do so specifically as a bit of a learning tool, so I can watch factions in action and watch particular units or strategies be enacted on the table. That makes this, for a player like me, significantly less useful. These battle reports are not something you're going to be looking at to try to glean in-depth strategic knowledge. And while I do recognize that, you know, again, I'm not the target audience for this style of video, it is a little bit unfortunate that I'm not really being served by the subscription service. There's also this edit profile button here, which it doesn't do anything. There's no options to edit your profile. There is a section where I believe a profile image was supposed to go, but you can't click on it. There's no way to edit this whatsoever. I even tried to do it in my Warhammer account, and there's no way to do that either. It's just my email. So I was actually going to come in and change this before I recorded the video, so it wasn't just my email there for everyone to look at, but you know, it is what it is. This is how Games Workshop wants it. They want everyone to look at the first part of my email as my username. So now we've talked about the platform itself, let's cover what is available on it. The first thing that's very apparent, because they like showing off, are their battle reports we were just talking about. These are pretty highly edited and kind of slick, but in some cases relatively cringy, and basically lifted directly from 40K in 40 minutes.
With a huge flash of lightning and a clap of thunder, the noble Thunderstrike Stormcast Eternals have arrived to dispatch these monstrous minions and drive them back for the glory of Sigmar.
Cool. They have a variety of battle reports from Warcry, Age of Sigmar, and Warhammer 40K, as well as Warhammer Underworlds and Horus Heresy, which I thought was kind of cool. And I also appreciate that they have a variety of different styles of game. We have not only giant narrative play games, but also smaller games like Incursion level and just regular matched play games. Most hilarious to me in this series, though, is that doesn't look like the matchups are vetted at all. So there are often some absolutely ridiculous mismatches. My favorite was a Drukhari versus Craft Worlds from last year, so 2021, before the release of the new Craft Worlds Codex, which meant that we were watching a pretty tuned army with a very solid list, maybe not optimal, but very close to it, from the game's best faction playing against an outdated 8th edition book. The Craft World army was tabled by the end of turn 4. So I guess at the very least, the games aren't scripted, because a lot of them tend to end with one player totally dominating the other. We also have Lore Masters, which is a documentary style series of videos that very much ape kind of a YouTube lore video, but with way higher production value. These are actually kind of fun. They have a lot of interesting artwork, mostly over some enthusiastic narration, but occasionally they awkwardly use product shots alongside artwork, which sometimes makes them look a little bit cartoony. That is a little bit weird in a series that is otherwise pretty serious. Although I am learning more lore for my most recent series of shorts, I'm not a huge lore nut, although I do occasionally listen to lore content from other IPs just as background noise when I'm doing something else. And this kind of felt like those videos, but with a very nice production value. To be fair, while diving into specific topics like army sub-factions, the series can get pretty boring, but there are few documentary series without boring parts, so I think we can give Lore Masters a pass. This is one of the series where the inclusion of both Age of Sigmar and 40K content together makes things a little bit weird. The Battle Report series is broken up between all of the different game systems, but this one is not, and seems to be about 50-50 40K to Age of Sigmar, meaning that if you're just running down the playlist, you're gonna get kind of IP whiplash, I guess, between the two settings. Also available is Citadel Masterclass. These are high-level painting tutorials, and while they're mostly adverts for Citadel painting products, they still have some pretty good info. Hilariously, the videos often overlay hardcore guitar riffs over shots of painting toy soldiers, which is kind of a weird and incongruous energy, but I don't know. I think it's okay overall. The information here sounds pretty good, but again, I'm not a huge hardcore painter, although I do paint quite a bit, not to a competition level, which is kind of where this series is oriented. So if you're up for that, I think these videos are probably pretty good. Although again, a lot of this content can be found elsewhere on the internet, namely YouTube. And now the pièce de résistance for the entirety of the Warhammer Plus catalog: animation. Now, among the controversy and C&D letters that sprouted up when Warhammer TV was first announced, I must have missed the memo about these animations. I figured that animations would be a regular thing, especially given the amount of emphasis Games Workshop placed on external creators stealing their market share for these video releases. I was sort of expecting one piece of animation, maybe weekly, was probably the name of the game, but that doesn't appear to be the case. Instead, there are exactly 6 entries underneath the animation subheader. One of those, Armoring of a Space Marine, is just a 5-minute YouTube video that's available to everyone on the Warhammer channel, so that's not particularly exciting. The other is Astartes, a 13-minute long animation stolen from YouTuber Simon Peterson that is also available for free online. So there are actually only 4 exclusive entries in this animation category. And one of those, the Exodite, is a 35-minute long animation that's split into 3 parts that was, wait for it, stolen from another YouTuber. Yep, we're sensing a theme. So there are actually only 3 exclusive original series in the animation category. The first one is Interrogator, a 6-part film noir detective series about a PI in a hive city that runs about 75 minutes. Hammer and Bolter is an anthology animation series that I guess was originally focused on 40K, but now also and kind of confusingly has Age of Sigmar content as well. These run about 19 minutes per episode, and at the time of recording there are 11 entries, so about 3 hours of content, and I think is being released on a monthly basis, but again, I have absolutely no idea because the information page doesn't say anything on it. And again, I can't look at the date of publication, only the year, so no help to me here. And lastly, Angels of Death, a 10-part 3D animation series that runs about 15 minutes an episode, so a little over 2 hours of content. Basically a feature-length film. This one is actually pretty sick. The animation can be hokey at times, but is generally good. It has this kind of weird black and white and red all over aesthetic that is pretty moody and probably saved a lot of time in production, which I don't really love, but it's kind of whatever. I'm sure it also helps mask the worst of the animation issues, which helps it look a little bit more timeless, I guess. But overall, while the plotline is relatively generic, this series is pretty good. So in terms of actual exclusive animations, that leaves you with about 6 hours worth of wildly divergent quality, I will note as well. This section actually surprised me the most, largely because I was expecting more regular additions to it, given that it was kind of the whole selling point of Warhammer TV in the first place, but also because of how little is actually there. With the hullabaloo about stealing content from creators when Warhammer TV came out, where did all that content go? Are you telling me that Games Workshop couldn't cut a deal to get Damnatus and Hell's Reach or The Last Church onto the channel? Why don't we have a compilation of old Sodaz animations? Instead of a Warhammer Plus tag, why don't we have a Warhammer TV Original tag, and then include some other outside content to make Warhammer TV maybe more of a central hub, like a Warhammer content aggregator. Instead of just having these 6 entries, 2 of which include a single video that's available elsewhere online, why isn't there anything here? Warhammer TV is a streaming service that wants so hard to be kind of a Warhammer branded Netflix. It even has its own little Warhammer Plus exclusive tag, just like the Netflix original tag that Netflix itself has. But I feels like was created without realizing the absolute breadth and enormous scale of content that a streaming service like that has to be at all sustainable. In order to entice people to subscribe in the first place, you need to have a pretty wide library of content. And I mean, 6 hours of pretty niche animation, if you are a Warhammer fan, is pretty close to that. But you also need consistent ongoing releases to keep people's subscription active. And this just doesn't really have that. So while we do have these animations to look at, even if battle reports and painting masterclass and these lore master series are not your cup of tea, sort of like is the case with me, it is a pretty okay place to start from, but there's very little reason to stick around once you've paid that initial fee. Well, I recognize that the battle reports aren't really for a competitive player like me, and I'm not a competition level painter, so the masterclass isn't really down my alley. The lore master series is actually a little bit of a pleasant surprise in my opinion. It gets a little boring and repetitive occasionally, but overall is pretty fun. There's some nice animations in there, and clearly a lot of work went into it, and at the very least it makes for kind of nice background noise. But that said, overall, I'm not really impressed by the service. Warhammer TV feels like what would happen if your weird uncle who's constantly coming up with new business ideas and trying to sell you on like the latest MLM scheme decided last week that he was going to start a streaming service. He ran a Kickstarter to fund one professionally produced series, but then to fill out the rest of the content just ripped off DVDs from the clearance bin at Walmart, and spent like one weekend recording a podcast about I don't know, board games and threw that up as additional exclusive content. So at the end of the day, is Warhammer TV worth your Warhammer Plus subscription fee? Maybe for 1 month to blow through all the animations and maybe some of the lore videos, but after that, I'm not sure I'd recommend keeping it around. Maybe if they come out with one series that you like. I know both Interrogator and Angels of Death have had second seasons announced, which is pretty exciting. Once those are in and fully released, maybe pay for another month and watch them, but other than that, I don't know if I would be wasting my time. And that's it. That's my experience with Warhammer TVs. Thanks everyone for supporting the channel. You can do so either at the link down below, the YouTube membership. Nailed it. We're gonna do one take of that. Over at Patreon, patreon.com/tacticaltortoise, and Twitch subscribers who watch me on Twitch. I stream up basically every weekday, which is pretty fun. Come hang out with me, and we'll talk about Warhammer stuff, just like we did today. Anyway, that's it. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.